Beirut misses you, Bassum.
Nadia, we are live.
Oh,
But it's nice to
great.
know that Beirut misses Bassam. It's a nice sentiment. Hello, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, everybody.
And welcome to Live with ASI, a month of knowledge production, a series brought to you by the Arab Studies Institute. I'm MK Smith.
And I'm Bassam Haddad. And let us bring in our remarkable co-host.
And you are?
I'm Nadia Sveiti.
Welcome to
From
Live with
Beirut
ASI. Thank you, Nadia, and thanks for joining us as co-host. We are actually in a new setup, as you can see, and we will be ready for you. Just come back in, 4 seconds?
4, maybe 5.
Maybe 5.
Good afternoon. We have a jam-packed show for you today, including discussions of the earthquake in Morocco and its aftermath, the ongoing protests in Iran, as well as updates on Palestine, new texts out now, publications, and much more content. So we're very excited to have you joining us today. First and foremost, we're going to welcome our first guest, Adel Iskandar, who is a longtime friend of the show, as we all know. Welcome to our friend. There he is.
Hi, Adel.
See you again, of course. Hi, Nadia.
Do we have sound for you, my friend?
Can you talk?
I think so. Yes.
We can't hear you.
Hello. You can hear me? Well, it doesn't help. Hold on. Should we try it again?
You're doing great. I can see you're trying.
You're trying really hard.
Okay. How
You
about
should
if I
be
come
good
back
on our front because Nadia can actually. You want to sign on
you hear
again?
me? Yeah, that's
The
All right.
girl turning it off and back on again.
No worries. We're also being joined by Mu'in sometime soon and others, but perhaps we can take this time to start with the discussion on Morocco. But before that, we all have to acknowledge what's been happening in Palestine. This is going to be a very tumultuous period next. Everyone's bracing for impact. But this show was scheduled before. We probably would have made some adjustments. So we're just going to go with it. In the meantime, perhaps we can either, if Adel doesn't show up right away, maybe we can go to the Morocco discussion.
Before you do so, I just would like to add the fact that for those who are following what is happening in Palestine but are searching for more resources, there is a bundle available via Jadaliya. It is dated maybe by a year or two, but it does give context for what is happening on the ground. And we also have a film called Gaza in Context, which is available on YouTube, free to watch, and it really helps situate everyone's understanding of Gaza and the open-air prison that it is.
Absolutely. So there we go. This is Adel signing in again, and Mu'in. There we go. We have everybody here with us finally.
Hello, Adel and Mu'in.
Hi, everyone.
Oh, no. Why don't we have sound for either of you?
Nadia, can you speak?
Can you hear me?
Hi, can everyone hear me?
Oh, no.
Can hear
We
you.
don't have sound for anybody. This
I can
is
hear
unfortunate.
Mu'in.
Hold, please.
The three of us can have a
We have no
conversation.
audio for any of you, so people can just listen to Bassam and I speak for an hour.
Yeah.
We got lots of ground to cover.
We'll have a breakaway show.
But Nadia already.
Nadia, I'm trying to lip read for you, but it's not working.
But Nadia already.
I'm just fomenting rebellion here. It's okay. Don't worry about it.
So, folks, let's. There's no explanation for this because Nadia already spoke. Perhaps. Oh, Facebook has feedback. They're saying.
Oh. Well, that's interesting. Our live stream apparently can hear what you're saying. Just we can't.
Okay. Nadia, do you want to try again?
Can you guys hear me? I think the three of us are just going to have a separate show.
Live without
Can
ASI.
everyone on Facebook hear me?
Oh, I see what happened.
You got that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So.
Okay. I'll just go like this so I can hear from the
Yeah,
computer.
no worries.
Okay. Hello. Welcome, Adel and Muin, for the third time, but this time I can hear you say hello back. So, hi.
Good to see you.
Good to see you both.
Hi, folks.
Now we'll just jump right into it, especially while we're on the topic of Palestine. I know you two are here to discuss the interview, Muin, that you conducted with Adel regarding the 20 years since the passing of the late, great Edward Said. And as you covered in the interview, there's so much that he has contributed to academia, to activism, to political action that extends beyond Palestine. However, in the current moment, obviously, we can't ignore his contributions to the discussion of Palestine. So I'm wondering if the two of you might touch on a little bit two intersecting issues that you mentioned in the interview. The first being that Edward Said dedicated himself to helping people understand how to put decolonization into action, right? How to make it practice rather than just theory. The second being how academics and intellectuals should behave in the public space. And so I am particularly interested in the intersection of those two things because I think in this current political moment, more than ever, we're seeing the failure of intellectuals and of the so-called academic left or political left, especially in response to decolonization. So I'm wondering if you can unpack that a little bit for us, please.
Wow, fairly hefty.
All yours,
Moin,
Adel.
please. Moin.
Well, I'll let Adel respond, certainly also to the more theoretical aspects of that question. But I suspect that if Edward Said were with us today, he would be putting a great amount of focus on the media coverage of what we are currently seeing in Palestine, Israel, and the exceptionally one-sided coverage where, for example, you have The Guardian today, the leading progressive newspaper in the UK, which has two headlines mentioning the Israeli casualty figures and completely ignoring the Palestinian casualty figures. You have politicians falling over each other to condemn the Palestinians and emphasize what they term as Israel's right to defend itself, knowing full well that for Israel, mass slaughter is part and parcel of its right to defend itself, and just the complete elimination of any consideration of the broader, as you mentioned, colonial context in which the horrific events of the past few days have emerged, simply denuded from context, simply removed from history, as if these developments emerged from a vacuum, spawned only by the pure hatred of barbaric savages for civilization.
Absolutely. And I think, thank you, Moin, for saying that. Excuse me. I would add that probably this is a good opportunity for us to revisit Orientalism, which of course is required text in most Middle Eastern studies, but the manner in which not just the media, but also in intellectual circles and academic circles, there's a tendency for that double standard to be fairly clearly evident in the characterization of Palestinians, where they are only allowed to be victims. They're not allowed to aspire to their own liberation. They're not allowed to resist occupation, colonial, settler colonialism, erasure, and ethnic cleansing. So the genocidal practices of the Zionist regime over decades are ones that are considered the status quo. You compare that or put that and posit it against the backdrop of what's been happening in the Ukraine, and things become so starkly, shocking. I mean, I think one of the few advantages of having the social media today is people's ability to create these juxtapositions. In the past, Edward Said was doing this sort of media discourse, media literacy work himself. He's like, okay, well, this is what's happening on CNN, and this is what's happening here. Let's imagine what that looks like. And he would write extended essays trying to unpack this discourse. One of them being covering Islam, a manuscript that was very sort of seminal in that regard. But today, most of us are seeing this being exercised in an extremely blatant way. So that kind of speaks to the discussion around what the role of the intellectual is in these moments. This is where we are summoned and marshaled to take a position that is principled in favor of social justice and decolonization. So decolonization, while Saeed was a theoretician, he was an academic and he was a literary critic, and of course, he spoke to the academic community. But he decided that the ivory towers were not where action should be. That the discussion needs to be popularized, the discussion needs to be with the masses, that the debate needs to be a conversation at a societal level. And so that entails for us to use both the language and the instruments at our disposal to shift public discourse in such a way so that we can see where the real issues are. And in this case, it is fairly glaring and obvious. It's just that the machine that manufactures consent around Israeli occupation and erasure of Palestinianness has been so successful for decades that chipping away at it is simply not enough. So it requires for there to be a colossal effort on the part of academics and intellectuals if they want to commit themselves to this Gramscian notion of what it means to be organic and not be kind of a like a tool in the toolbox of those in power. And this is the principled position. And Palestine was and will continue to be the litmus test for what it means to be a public intellectual today.
And if I may just add, Saeed, in the aftermath of the 1982 Israeli invasion of Lebanon and the mass slaughter of Palestinians and Lebanese in that country, wrote a seminal article entitled Permission to Narrate. And I think if you were, again, to look at the media coverage today, it's all these, primarily either Israelis or independent and substantively pro-Israeli analysts and intellectuals, and then once in a while, you see the token Palestinian trotted out to give their point of view, and mainstream media is just saturated with examples of this, and Edward Said always emphasized the right of the Palestinians to narrate their own history and their own aspirations and their own rights, as opposed to having those narrated for them by others who would narrate them through the prism of their own interests, which often diametrically contradict and oppose those which the Palestinians themselves would like to see fulfilled.
Thank you both very much.
Thank-
And I know we're limited on time, but I do want to make space, of course, moving for you to introduce our audience to the fact that you also have done Connections episodes, as well as perhaps a quick thoughts on Oslo, at the Oslo Agreement at 30 years old. So if you would like to reflect on that briefly, we would appreciate it.
Yes, well, I did a long, and I felt one of my most interesting discussions for Connections with Adil on Edward Said, reflecting on his life and legacy. And then separately, I did a long Q&A, if you will, with myself on 30 years of Oslo, where I looked at the Oslo Agreement, what it actually did and didn't entail, what it has meant in practice, and where it has led us. And I think the salient points I sought to make were that anyone who ever thought that Oslo was about ending the occupation and Palestinian self-determination or statehood, words which are never mentioned in this short agreement, as opposed to the consolidation of Israeli rule and making transitional arrangements permanent, needs to look more closely at the reality and the disasters we see before us today are in many respects the logical outcome of Oslo. Because the other point that I sought to make is that Israel can do its very best, of course, with the full and uncritical support of the West. But the one thing people still need to learn is that Palestinians simply will not surrender, and no amount of oppression and dehumanization is ultimately going to put this issue away.
Well, thank you both very much for your reflections, both on air and also with pen and paper, or the computer, I guess. In any case, thank you both. For everyone's own benefit, I'd like to announce the fact that Bassam actually conducted an interview for the Flow podcast with Adel Mouin and Tony Alessandrini to discuss Orientalism 20 years on. And that will be released next week, so keep an eye out for that.
Absolutely. And we also talked with a person who's not here, obviously, Tony Alessandrini. He has written a very moving article on Jadariya, and everything that we
Yes.
are discussing here, whether it is a podcast or articles, will be included in the digest. So
Great.
thank you all so much for
Thank you
joining.
both for joining us.
Thank you.
All right, Nadia, it's all you.
So next up, we have Naveed Bakali and Farid Hafiz, who are going to be talking to us about their article, Understanding Islamophobia Across the Global North and South in the War on Terror.
Hello, Navid. Or is it
Hello, how are you
Naveed? It's with one E.
Sorry, is it
Yeah,
Navid or
one.
Naveed? We're pronouncing it differently.
No, it's one E. It's Navid. Yeah.
Navid, welcome.
Welcome to Live with ASI.
So yeah. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Could you
Nadia, it's all you.
take us? Yep. Could you take us through what sort of motivated you both to write this piece, and give us a sort of quick précis of it, and who you hoping that it will reach, and the specific moment that you decided to write this piece?
Yeah, so I think for me, I think that the genesis for this comes from a book project that Farid and I worked on for a couple of years, and so really the motivation for all of that came from, I think, our personal experiences in different ways. So, I can't speak for Farid; he's not here right now, but myself at least, I've been doing research on Islamophobia for throughout my graduate studies and for many years, and typically my work focused on the global north, looking at the Canadian context, European context, and so on. And then I had I had the opportunity to go to Bangladesh to visit the refugee camps, the Rohingya refugee camps, after the genocide in 2018. And in speaking to the people, the victims there, and the survivors, I began to rethink my understanding of the war on terror and the experiences of these people and how that kind of relates to the work I've been doing in this field. And so more and more I began to realize that there's a certain logic and language around the war on terror that's been deployed globally now. And so you have these sort of historical conflicts that exist in different places around the world, very much tied to colonialism and so on. But all that sort of history, all that sort of background is sort of swept under the rug, under the rhetoric of the war on terror. And I think that the previous conversation, kind of highlights some of that, right? Like the whole context of the Palestinian conflict is sort of swept away under this sort of discourse on terrorism and so on. And so everything and anything can be justified in the name of protecting national security and in the name of combating terrorism. And so I think the war on terror essentially has created a context and a language that can be used to essentially do that. And so typically we look at Islamophobia in the global north, but my experiences and the research I was interested in doing was looking at the global south. And if you look at, for example, the conditions in India, the annexation of Kashmir, this is a historical conflict that's happened in that land for many years. But now the occupation of Kashmir is being justified under the pretext of combating terrorism. You look at the case of the Uyghurs in East Turkestan, historically this has been a conflict. This idea, it was an ethnic conflict. It was a conflict around the PRC sort of seeing this group of people as being threatening to the cohesive nature of the People's Republic of China. But now these internment camps are being justified in the name of combating terrorism and re-education to prevent terrorism. And the same thing can be said with Myanmar and other different places in other places around the global south. So for me, the idea was to kind of highlight how in the war on terror, there's a discourse around Muslims and Islam, and that's very much sort of created a context which justifies everything and anything in the name of terrorism, and essentially completely forgets there's this sort of amnesia around the historical context, the colonialism, the colonial history of these spaces, which kind of give nuance and understanding to these issues a bit more.
Thank you so much. Is there going to be a continuation to the study that you both have embarked upon? Is there going to be a sort of a follow-up in terms of either the case studies that you look at or thinking through different ideas of how Islamophobia works, plays out in the global north versus the south? Or
Yeah, for sure. I think there is a need to kind of look at the nuance, right? Because they are very different spaces. And so the book that we worked on and the article kind of summarizes the key arguments of the book, sort of highlights the trends and the logic and sort of the theory behind all of this stuff. What I think would be an interesting thing to do, and I've sort of thought about this at some level and hoping to one day get to work on this, is kind of looking at the individual stories. I think, this idea of collateral damage in the war on terror, the individual stories, whether it's academics like Farid that have been targeted in the European context, or if it's just families that have been destroyed because of drone warfare, or whether it's sort of like just people experiencing like discrimination at work and more in the global north and so on. I think these individual stories are really what give sort of meaning to these ideas. And so what I would be interested in doing is sort of highlighting the individual stories of people from these different places across the global north and the global south, and putting them in one space where they can be read and sort of explored, to kind of again highlight sort of how this is sort of it is a global phenomenon, but there are individual stories that really kind of sort of, I think, help make it a real living reality for people.
great, yeah, thank you so much. We look forward to bringing you back to discuss that part when you get through that second part of the research, the sort of more intimate, daily, personal aspect of it.
Yeah, for sure.
Thank you for being with us, Navid.
It was my pleasure. Thank you.
Appreciate it so much. Take care.
All right.
And now we are going to go ahead and bring in our next guest, who is one of the authors of the impressive roundtable titled Ignoring the Local in Afghanistan. So today we are joined by Syed Hassan Akhlaq. Welcome. Good afternoon.
This is Hassan. This is a very interesting name in Arabic because it means that you have to stick to it. It's Hassan al-Akhlaq. It's basically somebody with good manners, morals, and it's something that it's a lot of pressure to live up to.
Thank you. Hello, everyone.
Hello, thank you so much for joining us. I'm hoping that you can introduce the primary arguments of your article, your roundtable for us today, as well as the roundtable with your peers. And I'm also hoping that you might be able to touch base a little bit with regards to yesterday's earthquakes in Afghanistan and the significance of elevating the voices of locals now more than ever.
Yeah, sure. So, first of all, as you just said, yesterday we had a huge earthquake in north western part of Afghanistan, means Herat, and unfortunately, the totals of the it's high number of people. The big problem is that the government of Afghanistan is not efficient to even calculate and tell us the exact problem. However, as I heard from different channels, unfortunately there is a lot of people who lost their lives. I even several villages. I heard that nobody was able to survive, and it needs attention of the world to help those people. And I hope that all of us to do what we can to help those people. With regard to my piece that I contributed to this table, so that's with regard to failure of the. We can use different terminology to explain it. Last 20 years, international involvement in Afghanistan, we can call it to modernize Afghanistan or to help development of Afghanistan or nation building or democratization of the Afghanistan. Any word we are using, the point is that so it was a international involvement to help Afghan people. But the big problem, and my main argument is that so while it was supposed to help Afghan people, but Afghan people were forgotten. And mostly the whole process, a lot of investment of the international uh, uh, partners were there to actually, in reality, they just wanted to practice their imperialist and colonialist ideas, and not to really help those people. And that's the big reason that we saw the failure of Afghanistan government. It was not just the failure of Afghanistan government; the whole hope in Afghanistan disappeared. Right now, we are facing with Afghanistan that girls cannot go to a school, they cannot learn something, they cannot do anything for self-development and better life. But that's one major problem, but not the only problem. So my point was that Afghan people were forgotten. What I mean by that? What I mean is that the Westerners went to Afghanistan with a lot of plan, with a lot of funds, but they didn't look at local culture, at potential, at what was available there, what was the main concern. So they went with their own ideas. In other words, I believe that ideas were before people, and they were more involved with the abstract ideas like democracy, woman right, human right, the division of the power between different branch of power, and like that. But in reality, they didn't look at the local culture to empower people to learn how to do it, to develop their own understanding and our will, and contribute in the decision making to for the betterment of the community. I gave a lot of numbers from the World Bank and other sources that shows that unfortunately even the numbers about uh, girl schools, many of them are were not great and were not something that we can be proud of that. So now another point that I highlight in this piece is that local culture was forgotten. People are not soulless entities or beings that just they can receive some kind of the fund or plan, and we are not machines, we are human, we have our own soul, we have our own culture, our own language, but they didn't consider this language, this culture. I gave for example this example that for 20 years people talk about uh, gender equality in Afghanistan, but nobody translate the word gender in local language to tell people what gender means. So neither in Dari nor in Pashto there is no word for that. Or they were majority of Afghans are Hanafi, and there was a potential in Hanafi school of law to develop the society, or at least to help to get some benefit for the community for women. For example, Hanafi school is the only classical jurisprudence school in Islam that allow women to act as judge. But nobody used this kind of potential to develop uh, culture and develop situation in the way that people think new idea, democracy, human right, woman rights are consistent with their history, with their language, with their faith, with their worldviews. So these are some examples that I provide to tell that democratization is not just based on a market reasoning. It needs more than that. It's not just funding. It's not just to organizing, to have plan, to have a project. It's a process, and it needs the involvement of people. So my final point is that the subjectivity, the agency of Afghan people were forgotten. To give you a final example is that uh, all focus were on large cities, and Afghanistan fundamentally is a agricultural country. So more villages than cities. So villages were forgotten. People in villages, girls, boy, were forgotten, and they were left to join extremist group, or at least to have no access to education. So all of them played a role in what we saw 2 years ago, that the Afghanistan government collapsed, and not just the government, but as I just told you, the entire hope, and I think in some way generation. And
Great. Thank you so much, Saeed. The entire roundtable and the various contributions to it are available on jadalia.com and will be included in this episode's digest, which will be published later in the week. Thank you so much for joining us, and thank you for your contribution to this roundtable.
sure, thank you for giving me this opportunity. It was great, Doctor.
Thank you. All right. We are going
What's
next. We are going next to a very important roundtable that was actually conducted recently in September, which commemorates the 1 year anniversary of the Iranian protests. And I actually have been so fortunate to have been part of the broadcast, simply introducing the panel and putting it online in both times. And for this particular event, we're going to host the amazing Catherine Sameh, who is a co-editor of the. Okay, we have the wrong person. I apologize. Catherine, this is not you. Sorry, we'll bring you back. We will bring you back. Let me see here.
We got tons of people just
There we go.
waiting for the opportunity.
There we go.
Hi, Catherine. How are you?
Good morning, everyone. How are you?
Well,
Great.
how are
Good
I was
morning,
just saying that
Catherine.
you are the co-editor of the Iran page on Jadaliya, and we are very excited to have you tell us a little bit about the roundtable, which actually did very well, and it's clearly an important moment to commemorate. So the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Bassam and MK. So happy to be here, even though it's a very stressful time, of course, with what's going on in the occupied territories. And of course, Iran is now a target again, or still. So we had this roundtable to commemorate the anniversary of the killing of Mahsa Jina Amini on September 16th, 2022. Kurdish Iranian woman, young Kurdish Iranian woman who was arrested for improper hijab, quote unquote, brutally beaten, and eventually died. And there was, of course, I think the world knows, an incredible uprising that started in her hometown Saqqez in the Kurdish province of Saqqez and spread throughout the entire country, and was sustained for months and months and months and months. It was a beautiful, women and girls led but broadly supported uprising. I should not speak in the past tense. I'll say it is a broadly supported uprising. We saw teachers, we saw pensioners, we saw workers, oil workers, sugarcane workers, women and girls really coming out and supporting what really remarkably we can say was perhaps one of the first sort of feminist revolutions. So uh, a year later, of course, there has been incredible crackdowns by the state, surveillance, increased surveillance, violence. But as the conversation revealed, which was with artists and activists, Morashine Alayari, Aisha Momeni, and Sama Uriad. Aisha is a longtime women's rights activist in Iran and the diaspora. Morashine is an incredibly successful artist, and Sama, who's based in Europe, is a key player in the transnational organization Feminists for Jina that emerged in the wake of the killing of Masa Jina Amini. And as these activists and artists told us in the conversation, there's still so much happening, and the significance of this moment cannot be understated. They highlighted, again, the deep kind of feminist nature of this uprising, not just in terms of women and girls being at the center of it, but the demands, right? The demands to respect life, to honor people's lives, to pull people out of the kind of economic, social, political hardship that has characterized the last, many years, but particularly the last 5 or 6 years in Iran. So feminist in terms of really thinking about what is it that people need and want, and what does it take to not just survive, but to thrive and to live with the kind of beautiful expression of community and solidarity that we saw in the streets in Iran. So that was, I would say, the kind of key takeaway, that this was a deeply feminist uprising, not just in the social actors, but in the demands and in the kind of organizational culture built on the streets, that built on decades of organizing, but really kind of made explicit the intersectional nature of the demands among, queer and LGBT people, feminists, workers, pensioners, intergenerational, right? It really was that incredible and that sort of deep and widespread and also intersectional. So that was, I would say, the sort of main and really kind of hopeful point. I would say, secondly, the activists really made clear that while people aren't out on the streets every day, that there's still organizing going on, that people are talking with each other in Iran and the diaspora, and really trying to kind of build the coalitions that people have been trying to build for a long time, to continue to do the work and to write and think together and discuss sort of, what's next, how to, potentially scale up some of the demands, but, mostly to think together and be together in some kind of container. And that even though we don't see as much of that sort of on the streets, that we know that from these activists who are deeply, deeply connected to activists in Iran, that people are still organizing. So I would say that's the kind of second thing, even though we don't necessarily see it, there's a lot of organizing happening. I'd say the third thing is that this ignited the diaspora in a new and kind of renewed way, and that Feminists for Gina, which is an amazing organization, they've done just a tremendous amount of organizing and writing and thinking, and in the European diaspora, the Middle East diaspora, the American diaspora, that this organization and its allies have really kind of come together and felt a kind of freedom to claim this movement, to be part of this movement, to align with this movement, to continue to build the community of activists and artists and everyday people, without worrying about, kind of historic worry in the Iranian diaspora and many diasporas has been, if you critique the Iranian government, you will ally yourself with the neoconservative, warmongering, um, right wing of the US government. And that if you say nothing about the kind of authoritarianism of the Iranian state, in sort of a defense of an anti-imperialist stance, that you'll, apologize for the regime. And so that kind of triangulation really wasn't as much of a concern in this uprising. Iranians in the diaspora felt a kind of new freedom to say something that Iranians in Iran have been saying for a long time, which is we're both for a kind of further democratization of our society and against Western intervention and imperialism. But that was broadcast, I think, more deeply and widely, and it resonated with many feminists in other parts of the global South who have often felt like they had to kind of pick and choose between an anti-imperialist message or a sort of anti-authoritarian message. So those were the key points. There's a lot still happening, and I think this movement really ignited a kind of hope and inspiration transnationally, and we're still paying attention to it.
Thank you so much, Catherine. This was a very thorough and insightful summary, actually. And I urge everybody to take a look at the. I'm looking at the screen.
I am too. I've been doing it all
Yeah,
day.
I'm doing that the whole day. This is a new setup, so we're just getting used to it. So thank you, Catherine, for all your efforts in putting the roundtable together and coming on LWA. We hope, actually, we don't hope that you guys continue to do this. We hope that we will not hear any problematic news anymore from the Middle East, which is completely unrealistic given what's happening right now and what's been happening for the past 6,000 or 7,000 years. So we'd love to have you back in any case, Catherine, regarding any developments on the Iran page, you and your amazing colleagues there. And we will see you soon.
Thank you so much. Appreciate your support. Take care.
Thank you, Catherine.
Take care. Bye-bye.
And now Nadia will introduce our next guest.
Sorry, yeah, my computer froze for just a second. So next up, to continue with the sort of powerful themes that we've been covering this show, we have Professor Ariela Aisha Azoulay, who is joining us to discuss her article entitled "The Ruins Should Be Inhabited as Part of a Process of Repair." Welcome. How are you?
I'm good.
Nice to
How are
see
you? Nice to see you.
I'm fine, thank you. Can you hear us okay?
Yeah, sure. Some reverberations, but
Sorry?
yes, fine.
Karam says there's a massive echo.
We're going to try to adjust that. But in the meantime, could you take us through and just give us a kind of quick summary of the article, what it's about and why you opted to write it, and also the sort of timing of it, given the events that have been going on over the last 24 hours or so. Thank you.
Yes, so the timing was not planned, as you can imagine. It was published, I think, last month. But the question of Palestine is a very long, long durée question. And what I try to do in this article or in this essay is to think about this long durée of Palestine and to think about Palestine not in the terms that international relation offers us to think about it as a conflict between Israel and Palestine, but to think about it as something that was created by Europe since the late 18th century, the beginning of the 19th century, when Europe created two problems, actually. One of them was the Jewish problem or the Jewish question, and the other one was the question of Palestine. And somehow the same Europe that still was not held accountable for the destruction of Palestine in 48 alongside the Zionists. So the same Europe actually created an entangled solution to the imperial problems that it created. And the entangled solution was the colonization of Palestine with the Jews. So it has a kind of also double interest on behalf of Europe. On the one hand, they wanted to have a strong footing in Palestine for theological and political reasons. And on the other hand, they were not really interested in keeping the Jews in Europe. So this entailed this kind of solution to colonize Palestine with the Jews. Jewish Zionists came later, came after the Christian Zionist. And this is what I'm trying to emphasize in this essay, and to invite us to think about, the broader context of the destruction of Palestine and the interest in preserving Palestine under colonization. And the immediate colonization is obviously by the Zionists, but the broader colonization is a Euro-American project. And I think that if you ask me about how to tie it to the actual moment, so I think that the immediate siding of US and other European imperial powers siding with Israel and actually allowing Israel or giving Israel, backing to retaliate with no limits, prove us, I think, how much there are a bigger interest than the Zionist interest in keeping Palestinians under the colonial project, and how we have to think about Palestine, continue to think about Palestine as, on the one hand, a place that is still a place of hope, but on the other hand, as a place that can be a further tragedy, and how we continue to mobilize our imagination to think about the broader meaning of European interventions in North Africa and the Middle East, by creating actually a world that is Judeo-Christian on the one hand, and Judeo-Christian imperial on the one hand, and Islamic on the other, while the history since the beginning of Islam was a shared world between Jews and Muslims. So the destruction of the Jewish-Muslim world is actually the third aspect of the creation of Palestine as a question that Europe wanted actually to colonize it. The creation of the Jews as another problem, that Europe used the Jews as a kind of middleman until through a long process of 200 years or 100 years, the Jews became engaged in colonizing Palestine, and the destruction of the Jewish-Muslim world. So I think that thinking about these three questions together and seeing the imperial and colonial powers backing another colonial project in Palestine is the framework that I join, and I invite others to think through, and especially now when we see that, thousands of people already died in between the sea and the river. And this goes beyond what happened now, because the question is really the long durée of the Zionist colonization of Palestine, plus more than 70 years, but the colonization of Palestine and the Jews by Europe.
Ariella, thank you so much. This is, we encourage everyone to read this article for its own sake, but also in particular because of the way in which, as we just heard, it ties to sort of being able to sort of contextualize the current moment and the conflict. Thank you so much for being with us. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for being with us. I'm going to bring, before we let you go, I'm going to bring Wasim Ghantouz, who had actually published an article on Jadaliya in Arabic, addressing the internal crisis within Zionism in Israel. So feel free to stay with us for this segment, Ariella, but you're free to move on whenever you like. Marhaba, Wasim. We can't hear you.
Oh,
Hold on, let me see. Maybe I have you on mute. Okay, let me see. Yeah, you are muted. Uh, I just unmuted you. It is a very good time to silence Palestinians, eh? 1 second, what's going on? I have no idea, Wasim. I'm trying to. Can you? Oh, you muted yourself now, so you're muted from your side. If you can just toggle one more time. How about? Do you want to call back? Maybe you should call back. No سمحت. Sorry, apologies about that. This was fascinating, Ariella, and we would love to have you back anytime, both on Jadaliya and on LWA. I'm sorry this didn't work out. We were trying to have a conversation, but we will see you soon. Thank you for your contribution. Okay, there we go. Let's bring him in.
Let's bring him in.
Okay, you are muted on your side, Hala Wasim. There's nothing I can do on my side. Maybe in the actual app.
ممكن if it needs to be on Chrome, yeah.
Are you know that's not the issue. Because it says guest. Let me see. Okay, guest muted themselves. So you're. طيب, Wasim, do you want to maybe restart the computer and call back at some point in the next 20 minutes? And we will just bring you in? Apologies for that.
شكراً. Well, in any case, while we're experiencing these technical difficulties, now is probably as good a moment as ever to show a pre-recorded bit that we
Absolutely.
have with Samia Erzuki, who is one of Jadaliya's co-editors, as well as a postdoc fellow at Stanford, as well as she was previously a reporter with the AP and Reuters based out of Morocco, and she joined Muin for a discussion.
How do you know all this?
She's my friend.
Okay, I mean, yeah.
She is my friend, and also I re-listened to the interview on my drive here. So anyhow, in any case, it's a great interview. I can
It's
tell
good
you,
to
having
say re-listen. That's nice. Nice touch.
in any case, Samia has some great reflections in her Connections podcast episode. If you want an in-depth understanding, especially if you want an in-depth understanding of how the state of Morocco and the king and his men have responded to the earthquake and the subsequent
Absolutely.
consequences. There it is. And Bassam, however, had Samia join him for a quick recap.
Yes.
I'm curious, did you touch on the IMF World Bank meeting?
Not too much, because we had a limited
Sure.
time. We're trying to squeeze in 14 people here, and I'm also very proud to say that Samia's new post is a remarkable one, and she had a really good run on the job market. So I'm really happy for her, not just because we love her and she's the founding editor or co-editor of the Maghreb page, but also she was my student some 12, 13 years ago. We'll not talk about the exact number. طيب, here we go. Let's bring in Samia. Good afternoon, Samia. This is a pleasure to see you again and speak with you. I'm not going to take up a lot of your time. We just would like to ask you about your Connections podcast appearance, in which you discussed the earthquake in Morocco, and we would love to hear your thoughts on the podcast, and perhaps a little bit of an update as to what's been happening. You can highlight whatever you feel is significant.
Yes, so when I spoke with Maureen for the podcast, it was in the immediate aftermath of the earthquake. And a lot of the issues that we highlighted in our conversation was the absence of an immediate state response. We had spoken about the fact that it took the leadership of Morocco nearly 20 hours to issue a statement, address the public about what was being done to rescue those that were caught under the rubble and initiate an actual emergency response that should have been done a lot earlier, considering that in those immediate moments after the earthquake, that's the most sort of crucial moment to ensure the least amount of loss of life. And by that time, the death toll was mounting. And so we discussed this issue and the fact that the King of Morocco, Mohammed VI, had just recently arrived from Paris, where he had spent an extended period of time over the course of the past few years, a topic that's been covered by several media publications. And it was just an opportunity to sort of take pause and look at how, unfortunately, it was in this moment of crisis, in this moment of urgency, that the inefficiency, the ineffectiveness, the corruption, and the excessive bureaucracy and the centralization of Moroccan governance had an immediate human toll. And this was something that we highlighted. Now, since then, there's been a number of efforts that the Moroccan government has announced in terms of compensation for victims, survivors, and efforts to rebuild. And so that was something that we didn't cover, obviously, because of the timing. The other issue that we covered was the fact that the epicenter of the earthquake happened to be in a part of Morocco that is already extremely marginalized and isolated and deprived of basic infrastructure that we oftentimes find in a lot of Morocco's urban centers. The epicenter being in the High Atlas, independent of a natural disaster, right? On a day-to-day basis, accessing and getting to this part of Morocco is very difficult. Not all roads are paved. Access to basic utilities such as running water and electricity are not always guaranteed. And so those issues, compounded with earthquake of that magnitude, right, 6.8, 6.9, was only going to make rescue and recovery efforts that much more challenging. Furthermore, we also discussed how Morocco is being selective about which foreign aid it accepted. In the immediate moments after the earthquake, a number of foreign countries announced their support and willingness to provide aid and also send teams who are experienced with these kinds of emergency response efforts. And not only did Morocco not immediately respond, but then it was very clear that it was selecting which offers to accept based off of diplomatic lines. And this sort of came at a time when it was urgent. It was a question of urgency. The death toll was mounting, and here we see the Moroccan government using diplomatic politics as a measure of how to disperse and provide aid to those who needed it most. And sort of one of the issues that I raise and I still contend and I stand on is the fact that I think the death toll could have been much lower had these issues not arose at the time that they did.
Thank you so much, Habibti. So let me. Wonderful.
You cut yourself off at the
I
end of
cut
that video.
myself off because we are actually running short on time. I had asked a quick follow-up question, but we're going to actually move to bringing in Basil, who has actually very. Where is Basil? Basil, are you with us? There you go.
For those unaware,
Yes.
Basil is a co-editor of our Syria page. Yes.
He is co-editor of the Syria page, and he's also co-editor of the Salon Syria website that is a sister of Jadariya's. And he has just won a major prize at APSA, Best Paper Prize. Here we go. There it is. Best APSA paper.
Woo!
And
Mabruk.
Yes, Mabruk Basil. And we
Thank
brought
you.
you here
Thank you.
to tell us
Shukran,
about
shukran.
it. So tell us a little bit about this paper, what it's about, while we have you with us.
Thank you. Can you see me?
Yes, sir.
Okay, that's great. Also, first of all, thank you all for the invitation. It's been a long time, so it's good to see your bright faces here. The article is basically is based on my first-hand observation during the first 2 years of the prize in 2011, 2012, when I was in Damascus before being forced to leave, and also based on extensive work with activists when they were themselves they became as a result of the what became as a civil war. It examines specifically the dynamic of sectarianization that took place gradual during that period, and my argument is specifically aimed to challenge the dominant narrative, and like even though like primordialist and orientalist approaches are considered dead, but unfortunately they are very common. Therefore, my aim was to examine really what led to this dominance of this discourse, even when we had cases when there wasn't yet sectarianizing dynamic on the ground. So sometimes these sectarian pays voices were higher than and more heard than what was really going on the ground. Also, it aims to emphasize that there was and still elements and large elements in the whether in the Syrian opposition or inside Syria who oppose and continue to oppose any kind of reductionist understanding of the identity on the one hand, and also their relations between each other as Syrian citizens. I think at the level of academia, I think there is also it's addressed to criticize the obsession of some social scientists with producing generalizable conclusions and maintaining existing structures of knowledge, which may lead to the imposition of hegemonic visions on the lives of local people. In turn, I think this may lead to reifying groups, rewarding warlords in post-conflict settings, for instance, and silencing anti-sectarian and secular voices, writing them out of history as if they never existed in the country, as if it's a binary between Alawite and Sunni, and minority versus majority, and as if the whole conflict is part of a larger conflict that started in Iraq, Yemen, Lebanon. And we see also in the coverage of these days, like how in Gaza and Israel these days, like immediately, like there is a jump that, for instance, what's going on? They are puppet of Iran. Like this is very reductionist of really understanding. It could be not, but there is immediate really narrative that everyone is acting based on being enmeshed in relations with regional power, mostly sectarian in this context, as if people don't have any agency when they act upon that.
Thank you so much, Basil. We are enlightened and enriched by your achievements. Thanks for being with us. Your video, by the way, is very choppy, but I tried to look at it on the back end of our back end, and for some reason it must be an internet issue on your side. But we kept your image as it was, because it flows a bit. Thank you for being with us, and we hope to have you next time when we hear even more good news.
Thank you so much, Bassam. Thank you, MK. Thank you for having me.
Salam.
Good to see you.
Take care.
Now we are going to bring
Bye.
in our very own John Callis, who we love. I don't know how else to introduce you. A superstar, an assistant managing editor of Jadaliya, a graduate student, an activist, an icon. John, it's good to see you.
Hi, John.
Great to see you all. I hope there's not too much background noise or anything right now. I'm in a public area, but in a quiet corner. Hope you're all doing well.
We're doing good, John. We don't want to take up a lot of your time, as we promised, and actually your audio is a little bit muffled with the background noise, but we want you to tell us what you would like to share with us about any highlights that we have missed because some of the guests could not make it on this show.
Sure. One of the great highlights is a book review from Mandy Turner. The book is titled, the book is titled "Protecting Human Rights in Occupied Palestine," and it's a series of essays by the past United Nations delegates to the occupied Palestinian territories. The past three, as well as a more recent, as well as a introduction essay by the current person holding that position, Francesca Albanese, and Essentially, the book documents the kind of different ways in which these three people have tried to kind of uphold and affirm Palestinian human rights in the United Nations, and the kind of roadblocks of doing so in an international body as such. Um, the One of the big takeaways is kind of that this position, because it's not necessarily affiliated with a particular state position, allows a certain level of freedom to the person occupying that position in order to advocate for very obvious things, and things that seem sensible to more sensible people, I would argue, such as Francesca Albanese, condemning and reporting that what Israel is committing is apartheid, and Israel is existing as an apartheid state. It also discusses the severe backlash and repression that folks in this position have received for standing up for these basic human rights, for doing their job, for making very objective assessments about situations in the occupied Palestinian territories. The person holding this position has not been allowed to actually go and see this specific place that they're working on maintaining the human rights of the people living within it. And it's overall a terrific review essay, and really contextualizes not only what this role holds within the UN, but also its position within the broader kind of international legal framework for human rights and advocacy for the Palestinian people, which is an incredibly crucial role in this day and age.
Thank you, John.
Thank you very much, John. Thanks for making it despite the noise and everything. We love to have you again next month. And why don't I bring myself into this?
Why don't you?
Why don't me?
Why don't me?
Why don't me? Shukran, John. We're gonna go to. We'll be with you again soon. You and I are, and so many of us are on text 24/7. So we'll see you soon. We will now bring in Omar Faris, who is the managing editor of the Arabic section of Jadaliya, and he is going to tell us about the production of knowledge in the Arabic section of Jadaliya. Ahlan wa sahlan.
Hi, Bassam. Hi, Abdi.
And you have met Nadia last month when we were all in Doha for the Iraq conference.
Not all.
Okay,
Not
sorry,
all of us.
Sorry, not all of us.
Hopefully in the coming days.
We are looking forward to hear a bit more about the recent knowledge production on the Arabic section of Jadaliya, Amal.
Yes, thank you, Bassam. Over the past month, our Arabic section at Jadaliya has delved into several prominent topics that have ignited public discourse. We provided coverage on events like the demonstrations in Al Suwaida and the ongoing challenges faced by our Palestinian people. Additionally, we paid tribute to various influential Arab figures who have sadly passed away, including the Iraqi poet Karim al-Iraqi, the Syrian novelist Khalid Khalifa, and the Lebanese journalist Talal Salman. Moreover, we've published numerous articles addressing a wide range of subjects, from exploring issues related to gender, such as the life of Iraqi singer Masoud or Masouda al-Amaratli, to presenting translated poems by Rita Dove. And lastly, we shared the fourth episode of Tarshihat Masmoua, where we recommend compelling podcast episodes to our readers. And that's it from me. Thank you.
Shukran, thank you.
Thank you, Amar. Can you tell us a little bit about some of the plans for the future? I know that Osama Isbil, Sinan Antoun, and yourself are, as well as others like Katia Al Hayek and Basil Zeno, who was just with us, have been hard at work. Is there anything coming up that we should look forward to?
Yeah, we have a lot of upcoming articles to be published, tackling a lot of topics such as the recent events in Palestine and
Yeah, I
uh,
know we're already
uh,
working hard on that to try to get some feedback.
yeah,
But we should also say that we're not a news organization, so our reporting is usually
sure.
not about just like what happened. It usually happens days or sometimes weeks after, because it involves more analysis than just reporting the news.
Yes, sure, yeah.
And I know that we are collaborating with our sister organization, Salon Surya, to present and continue to present developments that are taking place in Sueda and beyond. Of course,
Yeah, and they are
there's a
providing us with a lot of material to cover anything related to Syria.
Absolutely. And Omar, we would love to have you on a monthly basis here, just addressing some of the pieces that we are publishing in the Arabic section, and we will curate this section a bit better online with live with ASI going forward. So thank you so much for joining us. I know it's late for you and Nadia in Doha, so we will try to wrap up. Shukran, Habibi.
Thank you, Bassam. Thank you, MK. And I'd love to join you on a regular basis. See you.
Salam. Salam.
Now we will bring in I believe it's our final live guest for the day, but save the best for last. We have Makaram El-Jamal with us here today. She is the managing editor of MESPI, the Middle East Studies Pedagogy Initiative, which works to bring resources to both educators and students to make knowledge production on the Middle East a bit more accessible. Makaram, can you please first, hello, hi.
Hi,
Miss you.
Makaram.
Hope you're well. Love seeing every month the development of your plants behind you. It's very promising.
I just remembered that I never used the ticker. I also remembered that I never used any of the interludes. Let's do an interlude now, Makaram. Yeah. Okay. Is that okay, Makaram?
If it's the MESPI one.
Yeah. Well,
update, it was not the MESPI one.
Yeah.
In any case, Makaram, please take it away. Tell us what's new at MESPI and what is there to look forward to.
Well, Bassam wanted me to tell you there is only one thing new at MESPI right now, and that was the PRAR, first installment of a PRAR winter issue. But
remind our listeners what PRAR stands for.
Oh, yes, sorry. The peer-reviewed articles review. Too many acronyms I use on a daily basis and forget to explain. So we have the first installment of our winter issue out already, and the second one is coming out next week. But we also are working on going through our peer-reviewed articles database to contribute to all of the articles that Moeen and Ada talked about earlier on Edward Said as well as on Oslo. So those are in the works and hopefully will be coming out in the next few months.
Awesome. And Makaram, I know we had planned to bring Makaram on and for her to say we absolutely have nothing from last month. Because we actually published a lot this summer, and then there's a lot happening this month in October. So, but, unfortunately, Shakila, who is like a remarkable team member, produced this PRAR, and then our whole thing fell apart.
Yeah. But it's great. We've got
did a great job.
In all cases,
you really sold it.
Yeah, Amjad, thank you so much for being with us, and we'll see you again soon.
Great. Thanks. It was nice seeing everyone.
Salam.
Bye, friend.
Bye.
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 Nadia's like, bye.
Bye.
Nadia, we are going to go to, we're going to, معقول what?
Just in general.
كمل معقول just in general
معقول أكيد معقول. You haven't seen anything yet. So we are going to a really interesting part where we talk about I talked with Lizzie Gulliver, who is co-editor along with Nadia Sbeiti of the Newton New Text Out Now page, which actually is one of our most productive pages for the past 12 years. On Jadaliya, we did turn 12 actually this month. In fact, last month, about 2 weeks ago.
I think every year we change our birthday. Just by like a couple weeks.
Well, we changed the announcement. So we stopped announcing it after the 11th or the 10th. This is actually, no, wait a minute.
Oh, after 11. This is 13.
This is the 13th.
Yeah.
We only announced it until the 11th. So we didn't announce the 12th or this month, last month, which is September 20 or 21st when we launched. In all cases, Newton has been an anchor for Jadaliya, and thanks to Nadia Sbeiti and Lizzie Gulliver for making sure that this continues to be a remarkable reference for educators and researchers. We had this conversation. I had this conversation with Lizzie earlier today, so I will just play it. Good afternoon, Lizzie. I am very excited that you're on.
Yeah, I'm excited to be on.
Lizzie, we have had a barrage of Newtons, not just the past month, but the past, a few years. And you have been the co-editor of the Newton page. Welcome to LWA. And you've been responsible for so much of this, along with Nadia Sbeiti. Would you tell us what were the highlights, some of the highlights in September 2023 in terms of new text out now?
Yeah, absolutely. So we had a variety of Newtons across September, including from some different geographical spaces, including Turkey, Egypt, and some more regional pieces. We also published Newtons across a few different disciplines, ranging from geography to public administration, feminist and gender studies, and technologies. So I'll just go over a couple of the highlights. For example, we posted a piece, an interview we did with Hani Awad, a researcher at the Arab Center for Research and Policy Studies, who is the author of a new book last year on the dilemma of authoritarian local governance in Egypt. So in the interview, we discuss with him kind of the aftermath of the Egyptian revolution and Mubarak's authoritarian rule and the effects of it on the kind of the smallest details of daily life, going more into detail about the kind of impact on smaller political areas and towns and village rather than at the macro scale. So in the interview, we really talk with him about the kind of interdisciplinary approach that he uses, and he tells us the kind of the audiences that he thinks the books might be really interesting for, including those interested in public administration, sociology, and anthropology. So we hope that kind of those in those crowds, as well as a wider audience, would find this Newton really interesting. We also did another Newton with Leila Shireen Sakar, aka VJ Amal, who is Associate Professor of Media Theory and Practice at the University of California. And we discussed her recent book called Arabic Glitch, Technoculture, Data Bodies and Archives. And Leila goes into detail about some of the stories that you would find within her book and asks some really interesting questions as well that have arisen from her research, including around AI and the potential of the glitch. So we think this Newton and indeed the book would be really interesting for a wide audience, but especially those from the sciences, humanities, arts, and technology. On top of that, we also produced a Newton with Claudia Liebelt, a professor of social and cultural anthropology at the Free University in Berlin. And we discussed her new book, Istanbul Appearances, Beauty and the Making of Middle-Class Femininities in Urban Turkey. And this really... in the interview, we kind of focus on the topics that the book addresses, broadly middle-class femininity in present-day Turkey. And we also discuss some additional interesting questions with her around her research methodology and some interesting personalities she met along the way. So we think these Newtons, among with others this month, will be really interesting for a variety of people interested in different sectors. And also, just to mention, and quickly, we also, this month was also a big month for Newton bouquets, which we post from time to time to show a collection of Newtons relevant to a specific theme. So this month, with the 30-year anniversary of the Oslo Accord, we produced a bouquet on different books and articles and volumes related to the kind of the global dimensions of the new realities post-Oslo, which includes books on anything from Palestinian hip hop to the trajectory of resistance within Gaza. And this is a really good reference point for kind of Newtons over the past decade or so. And then last but not least, we also posted a really interesting bouquet again to mark the 20th anniversary of the death of Edward Said. And this includes around 11 articles that we have done in the past on Newton, including conversations with authors who have written on anything from the intellectual history of Islam and Orientalism to Palestinian film and media. So yeah, we encourage everyone to go check this out if they haven't done already. And that's it from me for
Thank you
now.
so much. I was speaking on mute. Thank you so much, Lizzie. Would love to have you again. Enjoy Beirut and watch out for what's coming next. No one knows what's going to happen in the region soon, but be safe and take care.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
All right. See ya. Bye bye.
Who is one of our co-editors for the
sorry.
Syria page. Oh, okay.
Sorry, Nadia.
Yep.
Just
Yeah.
sorry to interrupt, but Wasim tried to call back. Let's see if we can
Oh,
bring him
okay,
in.
perfect. Okay.
Wasim.
Yes, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. Yes, we can. It must have been the issue. Must have been something. I'm glad you were able to restart. So, Wasim, can you tell us a little bit about your article on the internal crisis of Zionism, which is a very apt article given what's been happening the past couple of days?
Yes, sure. So, well, this article is based on my different works, academic work, my PhD, and the recent article that I co-published on the exacerbation of settler colonialism in Palestine. So the article, to summarize it in a few points, first, it rests on the premise that the current Zionist crisis is not merely a political crisis, because basically the two parties or two streams, whether it's the so-called liberal Zionists or the far-right Zionists, they rest basically or are instituted on similar conceptual bricks, which is the militarization, the biblical narrative, and so on, and the victim. Whereas what I see, the main crisis lies, as far as the Palestinians are related, of course, it's that which I term as political physics. So it's about the speed, the movement, the volume, density in which Palestinians are eliminated. And of course, this difference has different and quite significant political implications. So basically, the article dissects those two modes of operation and then the relations between them, between liberal Zionism that works more as a statist formation, metric structure, checks and balances, whereas elimination is produced more through a slower rhythm. And of course, the Israeli judicial system plays an important role in kind of calibrating this slow violence. And it mainly calibrates between the excessive violence, and then it steps in, says, like, for instance, the wall should not be include these parts of lands of the Palestinians. However, also it permits certain other violence, of course, due to the colonial mentality and the security mentality that is deeply rooted in this system. But then the far right stream, which is taking over today, and it is basically constitutes great part of the current government, is more of an effective force, that is perpetual movement. It's more of a momentum. It's more of a messianic force, where it seeks basically immediate elimination and closure of the frontier and the redemption of the land, of the so-called land of Israel. So these tensions, of course, they are historical tensions, and I give few examples in the article. And what I can summarize them in three main points. The first one, whenever any political concession or concession again between brackets, because like such as like the Oslo Accords and others. And we see that these kind of tensions also evolve into confrontations between those two streams. And then each time the Israeli government, and this is the second point, like eases any kind of its architecture of control and violence, then this force steps in and even says that the Israeli government and this system is kind of complicit in terror and in so-called Palestinian terror. And the third is, but whenever this kind of system, or the metric system of the liberal Zionism, which also dominated Israel's political system until very recently, when it tries to slow down these eliminatory violence. And I give an example from the article that I co-published recently, termed Dromo Elimination. So basically, these two differences, they also have all sorts of political ramifications. They also reflect two different colonial subjectivities. And of course, they have also great political, legal, and economic ramifications on the settler colonial project. And then that's why basically when we see the whole discussion about the overhaul, there's the Zionist, so-called liberal Zionist demonstrations against the new government are taking place, and they feel that it's an existential thing. It is that this government basically wants to smoothen out any sorts of friction that allows it to expand and to enclose the frontier and to basically end the Palestinian problem, whereas the liberal system tries more to manage the elimination of the Palestinians on a slower pace, and also creating all these colonial subjectivities, such as all the slogans that we know about the most ethical army in the world, and among other. Humanitarian, it's ruled by the rule of law and so on. But this kind of intensification that is taking place, and we can see it in all sorts of ways, and like, of course, the open calling of different members of the Israeli government, such as Smotrich and others, calling up, for instance, for the wiping of Hawara. And of course, Smotrich's whole kind of plan is called the decisive plan, so which also reflects this kind of, we need to put an end to this management. However, this management, and then, like this tension and confrontation, and it seems irreconcilable to me, because basically this metric structure that we've been used to, and kind of it calculates and it calibrates and so on, and also takes all sorts of inputs in directing the settler colonial project, now is being smoothed out by this force, and then it cannot have any kind of, there is no place on this very smooth channel for more inputs. And that's why the liberal Zionists are becoming outside of this governing mechanism, which basically also I connect towards the end of the article, that any political dissent within Israel, and also like this rift within Zionism, is also having the boomeranging effect that, of course, Aimé Césaire and others wrote about, whereas the whole violence that has been used and produced in uncolonized people and colonized land we're witnessing its boomeranging into the Israeli society. Of course, it's the beginning of it, but I think this is inaugurating also a new era in Israeli politics, and of course in Palestinian politics.
Wasim, thank you so much for this, first of all, for this incredibly important piece, and for your very thorough discussion of it here on the show. And we will be paying close attention to how things develop, and hopefully, bring you back to be able to discuss more of, the way that things certainly seem to be moving. So thank you so much for joining us and for taking the time to be here.
Thank you
and
for
take
having
care.
me. You too.
Thank you.
Wasim? Oh, I was on mute.
So now we will.
Sorry, I was
Did you wanna-
asking, can you ask me? I just want to see if he's...
We're gonna close our show. Okay.
So good.
Yeah, Naji, I'll stop him if he starts speaking.
No, I wanted to ask him where he's at and so on, but I'll stop. Yeah, I'll stop. Not, we've been on this show for 2 hours. MK, because she's closer to the coffee, she made us coffee. I mean, she just pressed the button, but she made us
I made it. I made it. Nadia, please. She's never gonna come back.
I'm so glad I'm not with you guys. I'm so glad I'm not in the studio with both of you right now.
By the way,
Okay,
Nadia,
so we were
everybody
going to
has
close
to
the
know-
show with
Yes.
Bassam's interview of Katy Hayek
Kitty.
from Salon, Syria, to give us an overview of the last couple of months of knowledge production on Syria. So
We're not
we can
supposed to-
run the interview that Bassam did with her. معقول انت عم تشلي؟
You know.
يلا run the video. Run the
it's
video.
been-
Play the video.
Yeah, this is a video with Katya on saloncelia.com, which is going to become and has been a major feature of LWA on a monthly basis. Here it is. صباح الخير. Good morning, Katya. كيفك؟
Good morning. الحمد لله. كيفك أنت؟
أنا كتير منيح. Katya, we are very happy that you are joining us at Live with ASI, and we would love to know what has been the general content on Salon Syria, which you are running on salonsyria.com, which is a major project at the Arab Studies Institute, which started in 2017, took a few iterations to settle, and now it's firmly settled under your leadership. If you can let us know what you've been publishing there and what people can expect.
So we're publishing, actually last few weeks we were able to cover multiple important issues. We generally don't cover like daily news like other websites. We are more interested in more in-depth analysis of what's going on in Syria in contemporary times, but also we publish a lot of like roundtables and in-depth analysis files on historical events or historical figures that are important to understand Syrian current affairs in its historical, economic, social, and political context. This last few weeks, as many people who are following Syrian news know that we had some important social movement happening in southern Syria in Al-Suwayda. And our writers were able to provide us with the three important articles. One article was more actually very timely at the beginning of the protest in Al-Suwayda. And our writer Omar al-Sheikh was able to get a lot of like visuals and videos that people there wanted to share with him and with Salon Syria, so their social movement get visibility. We also published an article about especially women's experience and more legal analysis of women's issues and concerns in Al-Suwayda by Rahada Abdoush. And another article was different from this two that I just mentioned, was more interested in, was from a writer we have inside Syria, who wanted to show also the complexities of how people outside Al-Suwayda across Syria perceive this protest, how initially a lot of solidarity and sympathy was expressed by people in the coast and in Damascus, but then some fear and concern about some trajectories that this social movement took was making some people like lose their initial sympathy. So we have very like diverse context. If anyone interested in like learning more about the consequences of this protest, we have really three important articles. Also, we have recently published two very touching pieces about the loss of the beloved Syrian writer Khalid Khalifa. His death was like Hatem Ali death a couple of years ago at a young age and sudden. and he is like Hatem Ali, one of like really the unifying figures in among Syrians. He's beloved by people from different political background, from different political leanings. Everyone who met him really spoke highly about him, and we were fortunate that two of his closest friends were able to share and how the community remembers him. We also, and thanks to my colleague Osama Esper, he has been working hard the last few months. Actually, we published like a huge roundtable called المنعطف السوري, and within this roundtable we have now like published a lot of articles in the last few months, but in the last 4 or 5 weeks we published 4 important pieces. One about Abdulrahman al-Kawakibi and his legacy and work on istibdad, authoritarianism. Another one was about Saadallah Wannous, the famous Syrian playwriter. And also in this roundtable, we were able to like publish about Mariana Brash, which is an iconic figure, an iconic feminist figure within the history of Syrian journalism. And I think one also of our recent articles within this roundtable is about Adila Bihem Jazairi, who was also a famous Syrian feminist activist in the history of Syria. So this roundtable has a lot of other coverage of other important historical figures. If anyone is interested to learn more about this of Syrian history, we encourage them to check the whole roundtable. Other things, so we like organize in Salon Syria, like in Jadaliya, and we have partnership with Jadaliya Arabic section, and me and my colleague Osama Esper also involved there. So we try sometimes also to publish some of this article on Jadaliya, the Arabic section. But in addition to like this roundtables and more specialized files, we published almost every week an article about currently what's happening to ordinary people inside Syria, how they are experiencing economic collapse, hardship. So we published one article about the effect of the increasing prices inside Syria and the devaluation of the Syrian pound on the daily life of people now inside Syria. We also published about in late August, early September, there was a heat wave and there was no electricity. I think Syria, same like Lebanon. And we also published an important article discussing the impact of that on ordinary people. We published one article by Salwa Zakzak about harassment and violence against women. And we were also fortunate to get something about archaeological sites inside Syria, the dead cities, المدن الميتة. We have also a writer who covered a project that trying to revive and protect this historical site. And our most recent article is about Al-Hasake in northeastern Syria and the impact of deforestation and what we call in Arabic التحطيب, like people cut the trees to use it for like short-term profit, and how that impact climate change and long-term effects in Syria. So these are some summaries of what we covered since like late August until now. I hope people will be able to check them out, and me and my colleague Osama Esper are also like happy to to like guide people to more articles if they are interested.
Thank you so much, Kathy. Thanks for giving us your time, and we will definitely be including all of this material in the digest with the salonsyria.com links that people can use to send and contribute and submit. Please stay with us across the coming months, because we would love to hear your feedback, and we will also be inviting Osama to share his views and contributions as well. Shukran.
Okay, thank you so much.
Salam.
Bye bye.
We have been speaking for an hour and 42 minutes.
Yes, it's been tiring, and thank you all for joining us. We are very happy that some people are still hanging on.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you for giving us your entire Sunday.
we will actually be showing a lot of this material on Jadalia's post, which will include the links to everything that we just shared.
All of this material, not some, all of this material. So?
Did I say some?
Yeah.
Okay, I need more coffee.
Yeah.
Nadia had to go to sleep. She's in Beirut. I thought she was in Doha.
No, Beirut. I don't think she was going to sleep. I think she was going out.
Really?
Mumkin, I don't know.
I don't think she's going out in these days. Okay, but يعني.
But stay tuned, not just for the next episode of this show, but for content that will be coming from all ASI branches.
Absolutely, including what's been happening in Palestine, with the caveat that we are analyzing, not reporting the news. And we will be fixing a lot of the glitches that have taken place today.
What glitches?
Yeah, what? طيب, السلام عليكم.